Okay, let's see if that works. Welcome to Dive into World Building, everyone. I'm really excited about today. Gosh, you guys, it was so great that you could be like, yes, why not this Tuesday? So our guests today are Marie Brennan and Alyc Helms, and they are awesome. And also they are Ma Carrick. So The Mask of Mirrors is the novel that they have coming out, and it's coming out really soon.
On the 19th, a week from today.
Yep.
Wow, that is amazing.
On the 19th.
So, a week from today. Wow, yeah, that is really soon. Okay. Awesome. Well, so everybody out there should be really looking forward to this. It's incredibly awesome, and we're going to talk about it a bunch today. Yeah, I'm sorry about the echo, so I think I stopped it.
Sounds good now.
And so let's jump in by asking each of you, since this is a world building show, what was your favorite aspect of the world building as you were working on The Mask of Mirrors?
You realize this is like asking a parent to pick their favorite child, right?
Do, because if you asked me the same question, I'd be like, I don't know. But like, I don't know is a valid answer. Maybe it'll get you to jump in.
I mean, there's a good one for me to pick out because it's really pervasive in the story, and it's even where the title of the book comes from, which is that there's this divinatory card deck in the setting called the pattern deck. And it's something where we knew going into the story that we wanted that to be a thing that our main character Ren does. But like it ended up just sort of weaving itself, because there's textile metaphors all over the place in this, weaving itself into everything about the story. And it's not just a tarot deck with different names on the cards, which I've seen in other novels, and I totally get the appeal of doing it that way. But we wanted it to be its own system. And so that's kind of one of my babies in the world building is I sat down and worked out what are the different suits. There are 3 suits that get referred to as threads, because it really is just textile metaphors ahoy in Versedian culture generally. So working out what the different threads were, what they represent, the unaligned cards, the faces and the masks, because deities in this setting have both a benevolent aspect and a malevolent one. And so that's the face and the mask. And, what are the different layouts that get used for the cards? And then a little further on, because apparently that wasn't enough, then it's like, well, of course people are going to play card games with this as well as doing the more, sacred divinatory stuff. And so we've got rule system for 2 different card games you could play with it, and ideas for a 3rd one. Like it's a complex thing. And so The Mask of Mirrors, the title of the book, it's the card of secrets and lies, which is a little fitting for a novel that I think I described at one point as a layer cake of deception and dishonesty or something like that.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of deception going on in the book for sure. You can never tell what anyone is wanting or doing or meaning at any given point. So that's pretty cool. You've got to try to figure it all out.
I might have had to make a chart at one point to keep track of that.
But that's what charts are for.
Yeah.
And usually it's 3 things at once, at least.
Yes.
And sometimes 3 things per identity at once, at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It got complicated.
Honestly, I love complicated. Marie, who has just read a book of mine, will know.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm totally down with that. Alyc, what was your favorite thing?
So speaking of textile metaphors and things like that, one of the other things we knew going in early on, and this is out of where the idea for the book came from, was that Renata, the main character who is a con artist, one of the things that she was going to need to sell her con was her clothing, because anybody who has done world building or paid attention to societies throughout history knows that one of the ways that you can tell if somebody belongs or not is, are they wearing the right clothes? And it can get very, very detailed what is the right clothes and what isn't, like down to things that if you're out group, you might not even know. But Ren has a secret weapon, which is her blood sister Tess, who is a very good seamstress and kind of innovative designer. And so one of the things Marie and I did very early on in brainstorming the world, doing the world building, was we sat down and we made a huge list of all of the things that we kind of love about, like different silhouettes that we love, different pieces, different styles from different cultures, and kind of laid all those out, and then looked at what we needed for the narrative in terms of what, the Versenians, which are the kind of indigenous local people, and then the Leganti, who are the descendants of the original colonizers, what they were going to be wearing, and kind of devise the fashion from there. And I just wrote like a long post about it, with very poor illustrations.
No, Alyc keeps slagging on their illustrations, and like, what I should do is I should take those illustrations and draw my own versions of them so you can see what bad looks like.
Well, I mean, I think that it just depends, right? If you're putting sometimes you got references that are really great in the world, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah, and one of the challenges, especially,
you can draw it, as I have learned.
Well, one of the challenges, because I have like a Pinterest inspiration board and things like that, but one of the challenges with 3 of the 4 styles is that the way that they came together, there isn't really any real world examples of the fashion. For the style that is basically what the Rook wears, which is sort of ended up being similar to male Leganti fashion, we were basically just going like, 18th century kind of male European, the justaucorps, the frock coat, the waistcoat, the neckcloth. And it really just all comes down to, we love that stanza from the Alfred Noyes poem, The Highwayman. He had a French cocked hat on his forehead, a bunch of lace at his chin, a coat of claret velvet, breeches of brown doe skin. They fitted with never a wrinkle, which is just like the sexiest line. And his boots were up to the thigh, which is the other sexiest line.
That's awesome.
And he rode with a jeweled twinkle, his pistol butts a twinkle, his rapier hilt a twinkle unto the jeweled sky. Anyways, so we knew that was going to be one of the styles, because that's, Zorro, that's the Scarlet Pimpernel, that's all of the kind of conceptual progenitors of the Rook.
Yeah.
But
a little bit of Assassin's Creed in there too.
Bit of Assassin's Creed in there, but all of the other fashions were really reference other styles, but are kind of their own thing.
Yeah, because literally what we did was I went through some historical fashion books and just made lists of details, like not whole looks, but details that I really like different collar styles, different sleeve type things. And then we took those and assembled them into what the clothing should look like.
Yeah.
That's fun. It sounds like a really fun project. So this seems like it was a research process for you. Did you have a lot of research to do?
For the fashion, not really. I mean, I think that like half the books that Marie was going through were books that I was like, here, I've got this one, and I've got this one, and I've got this one.
Yeah, it was just ransack our own shelves.
Exactly, because I've done a decent amount of historical costuming and theater costuming. And so, it's something I pay attention to when I watch like shows and stuff like that. Like Colleen Atwood is like one of my favorite costume designers, and the fact that I know who one of my favorite costume designers says a lot.
Yeah. Me and fight choreographers.
Yeah.
No, I mean, compared to some of the other things I've written, Onyx Court, this was not much research, because when I've done historical fiction, I tend to fall very, very far down the rabbit hole of looking up details. And even for the memoirs of Lady Trent, with that, the countries were meant to be analogs to real world places for the most part. And so there was a lot of research into specific places. Mm-hmm. This one is much more like taking inspiration from particular ideas, but reworking them into their own thing. So, like Versenian culture, there's, the language looks kind of Slavic, but the ideas about the soul are closer to Egyptian or something. And then their, cuisine is more like pre-modern Chinese cuisine because of the environment they're living in, and so on and so forth. So there was spot research, but no like deep dive on things.
Yeah. And some of it, I think, also came from things that we had done research about in the past, or just read about.
Exactly.
Like a lot of the political and economic structure is sort of based on some of the stuff that was going on in Renaissance Venice, but then we kind of spun it out on our own as well, in terms of like, the way the Patriot works and everything, the Charter House.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So actually let's take it a little bit into some of the more general level stuff. So did you wait? It seems like you were maybe mixing and matching a bunch of different kinds of elements as you were doing this. Do you have a specific location that you were modeling, or anything, or
I mean, in terms of the landscape of the city, it definitely looks a lot like Venice, because we decided we wanted the whole canals and little bridges kind of approach. But it's not in a lagoon the way that Venice is. It's actually at the head of a river delta. And so that's the sort of environment for it. And like the fact that the River de Gera flows from south to north, I was definitely thinking of the Nile when we decided to orient it that way. But it's not in the middle of a desert, for example. So there are definitely touchstones in there that people may recognize, but it's not trying to pursue one particular thing any great distance.
I think that's one of the ways that you can get an environment that has a lot of novelty is by not fully committing to one thing, but
right.
Yeah.
But pulling in things that people recognize.
And it's kind of looking at, because we had this environment, but then we also, I think, Marie, you actually know what the
latitudes.
The latitude is, because you worked that out, and I think it's like Melbourne, Australia, or something like that.
Yeah, basically, the climate is based a little bit on Melbourne, because that's at about the right latitude and on a coast. Obviously, it's in the southern hemisphere, whereas this is a northern hemisphere thing. But yeah, that is a
so
holdover.
That's interesting because.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say that's interesting because that latitude is almost like our latitude.
Yeah.
If you reflect it into a northern hemisphere.
Right. Basically Vrasan, the country that Nadezhda has kind of gotten separated from by politics, extends much more down into kind of a subtropical region, but they're sort of at the northern edge of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things about kind of setting it in a particular place, understanding the climate and the geography and everything like that, we start to, and this is where we're kind of saying it's not really based on any one place, because we start going, okay, well, what would the foodways be? Well, what are the foodways like in that kind of area? What would the kind of, we knew it was at the nexus of two trade roads, but then also the river and the ocean. And so you've got this crossroads kind of feel, both on a nautical level and on a terran level. And so what are crossroads of trades like, and what are the kind of things? And that's where actually a lot of the Venetian flavor, I feel, comes in, is not the canals, but Venice being a crossroads of trade, and the kind of society that you get developed out of that.
Yeah, we also have like a kind of a Silk Road influence in there, because it's essentially like in the middle of the Silk Road, except not also in the middle of a continent. It's on a coast instead, but it's got these trade routes extending in both directions from it.
So the word I kept thinking.
I'm ask you guys to tell me about an object that drew my attention, and that was the sort of shawl that had family history in it.
Ooh. The Kosani. Like I said, Versinian culture, basically the moment that we named the pattern deck, our brains just kind of like ran off with everything we can do with textiles, both literally and metaphorically. And so because family is very important to both cultures, but in different ways. That's one of the things we have fun playing with. Is it's not that one of them cares about X and the other doesn't, it's they care about it differently. So yeah, Versinians actually record their lineage in an embroidered shawl, and we haven't gone into detail about how that works, but we've got the whole system of, okay, the color of the thread codes which clan somebody came from, and there are different styles of knots that would say which Kurech, which is like a lineage, they are from within that clan. And I'd have to go look whether it's like one side is the father's lineage and the other side is the mother's lineage. So when you tie it around your waist, basically you come together at the knot. We got a whole thing that doesn't get described anywhere in there.
If either of us had any skill at embroidery, there would probably be on the list of making one at some point. But
I would have to make up, like I've done some embroidery, but I would have to decide like all the different knots.
Yeah, you'd have to come up with the
and that's not happening.
Well, the closer you get to something, the more it has to resolve into very fine details. So
exactly.
Very
Yeah,
challenging.
actually, at one point I had the thought that they might even have basically an alphabetic stitch code, but then ended up abandoning that because I started trying to work that out. I was like looking up embroidery stitches, and then I went, no, no, let's
Yeah.
not.
Well, that would be very challenging.
Yeah.
Interesting, but very challenging. So, this is cool. So can you tell me a little bit about the different language groups that you brought into the book?
So I want to back up slightly before I answer that, which is, as we've mentioned in a number of places, it's hardly a secret. This actually kind of grew out of a role-playing game that Alyc is running, which, yes, means Ren is my player character. And so the language decisions we made for the book were actually influenced by that, because once I've settled on a name for a character, it is incredibly difficult for me to change it. And that just was never going to happen with Ren. And so the fact that like her name that she was given at birth is Arenzelenskaya, and then she was masquerading as Renata Viraudox. Like, okay, so we're going to have a Slavic language thing and we're going to have a Latin language thing going on here, because I can't change that. Like, this will fall apart if I try to change that.
It won't be the same character.
Yeah, exactly. It would be a completely different person if I changed her name. So we've got the Slavic kind of flavored side of things. We're not using any one specific Slavic language, though, in terms of the way the spelling is. I worked out what are the rules for how things get spelled in Versenian. And I don't think, there might be a particular language they actually do map to, but for the most part, no. And then we don't use specific words from that language, except we do keep the sort of patronymic thing. That's the one bit that does translate through.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Leganti, we basically decided to have Renata, her noble persona, be actually from a foreign country that is a little bit to Seste Legante as like Britain is to the US, sort of the like parent country that Seste Legante had broken away from, that's still viewed as kind of being like, ooh, that's super fancy. It's from Ceteris. So Ceteris became the Latin kind of language country, and then Seste Legante, I usually shorthand it as saying it's based on Italian, but actually what we were looking at were some of the related dialects / languages like Venetian, Dalmatian, Ladine. I forget what some of the others were that I looked at, which is why you get things with the way the names work, like a T at the end of a word that you wouldn't see in standard Italian.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I sort of like, it seems like, this is a fantasy, so I expect things to be a little different anyway.
Right.
As opposed to direct import of Italian or Latin or whatever it happens to be. Okay, that's cool. So like, was it difficult to get those little I don't even know what they're called, little hats on the
diacriticals? Well, I think once you because we co-wrote in a Google Doc, and once you just incorporate those into, I think I had a replace function as I typed. So as I typed like Nadezhda, it would replace the caret atop the Z. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Caret spelled Caret, I think, not like the thing you chomp on.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of vaguely carrot shaped. I've always kind of considered it an actual carrot, but I do get your point. So, cool. Very cool. I thought that was neat. I'm a bit of a language geek, so that's always
just a little.
just a little. But anyway, so
Isn't that what linguist means?
Like for you co-writing?
Sorry, I didn't
what was
quite
it like for you co-writing?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
clearly it worked really well.
This started out as something we were just doing for fun for the game that I was running, that Marie was a player in, and we've told the story in many places that we were writing these scenes with her character and a bunch of NPCs, and got to about 50,000 words, and we're like, maybe we should actually write something together. Took a ridiculously long amount of time to go, maybe we should write this thing together. We kept on trying to come up with something else to write.
Interesting. Okay.
But then Marie, I think this is we were left alone joke
Yes.
that we always make. Her sister got on a plane, and I think by the time wheels were up, Marie and I had a full plan on, okay, we're going to write the series. It's going to be this long, and it's going to have like, here's how we're going to kind of rework a lot of things.
Yeah, she went out of town for a weekend and came back to us going, so we have a plan for a trilogy.
Yeah. So we were left unsupervised.
Yeah.
But because it came out of that, we not only did we already have kind of a basis for how we were going to be doing the collaboration in terms of the co-writing and going back and forth, but we already knew we were having a lot of fun with it. And so it was really just a question of formalizing that fun a little bit and making certain we kind of had an agreement to be accountable to, so that we would finish the thing that we wanted to create.
And I think it helped that we had done the writing, you know, for fun for the game beforehand, because it meant that we'd already figured out some of how we were going to work together. And we knew, I mean, we've known each other for, at this point, more than 20 years. So it's not like we don't know each other's work well. But we've spent lots of time talking about stories each of us is working on, helping the other person brainstorm. That was the first time that we really sat down and on a what's going to happen in this scene kind of level, like how will this conversation go, that we had tried to do that. And the good news is it turns out we also work well together in that regard. Because I will say, I think, especially if you're doing this kind of really close collaboration where you're trading off during the course of a single scene, like tag, what's your character's response to the thing my character just said? That you need to be able to both like trust the other person to come up with good ideas and or be willing to sort of look at what you've got and go, I think we can do better, like, and not worry that the other person is going to get their feelings badly hurt by you saying that. I think that's just incredibly vital for a collaboration.
And I will say it's interesting that for me, at least, and I don't know if this is true for Maria, though I think it probably is, that when I'm writing, it kind of always challenges me to bring my A game, because I'm writing because I want to be like, oh, Marie's really going to love this. Like I'm writing to give her something that she'll be like, oh my God, that's so good. And I think that that's where a lot of the kind of joy comes, not just writing with each other and enjoying that, but like writing to impress each other on a real-time kind of feeling.
Yeah, we leave marginal comments for each other in the docs, which like maybe when the series is done or something, we'll like find some way to post our comments to each other. Because I mean, some of them are things where it's like, okay, you know, we should remember this for later or whatever, but sometimes it's just things like, or sometimes it's, you know, a character. There's one actually that I just took out of the document because we're cleaning up book 2 to send to our editor soon, where I had typed in something of, you know, to be honest, Renata said, and blah, blah, blah. And Alyc put in exactly what I was thinking, which was, to be honest, Renata said, and then proceeded to lie. The epitaph on Renata's tombstone. Like, yeah, that's exactly it. So we do kind of live for each other's reactions to stuff.
Yeah.
But that sounds really motivating and fun.
It is.
It is, yeah.
So I know that there's a cute sort of etymology behind Ma Carrick as a name. Can you tell us about that?
I am proud of this because this was something that I came up with. So we knew that our publisher might ask us to publish under a joint name. And so before we sold the book, we figured we should think about that and try to come up with one. So I thought, okay, well, like James S.A. Corey, that's a collaboration. How did they pick that name? And I went and I looked. And James is one of their middle names and Corey is the other one's middle name. S.A. I think comes from the initials of one of their daughters. Like, okay, so if we did that, we'd be Marie Marie. That's probably not going to work. So then I was like, okay, well, you know, look back in the family tree for something I can grab, but like nothing in my family tree really said to me, I should be your pen name. And then like, would we also find something from Alyssa's family tree? I didn't really know. But then I thought we met at an archaeological field school when we were both undergrads, which the bulk of our time was spent at a place called Castell Henllys in Wales, which Castell literally means castle. And I thought that is too on the nose for a fantasy author. Like that just feels like you're trying a bit too hard. Henllys, we were going to constantly be trying to pronounce the Welsh double L, and that just, no, let's not tackle that. Then I remembered that part of the field school we had spent in Ireland in a town called Carrickmacross. I thought, well, Carrickmacross is too long. Could do cross, but MA, or I didn't have the MA yet, or maybe I did, like thinking M for Marie, A for Alyc, okay. But Carrick sounded good. And this was something I thought up like while I was brushing my teeth on my way to bed in the wee hours of the morning when Alyc was long since thoroughly asleep. And I think I sent like the chat messages or something with kind of this feeling of, I really hope Alyc likes this because I'm now suddenly super attached to it.
Yeah, and so I get the chat message, and I think I must have waited because I went and reviewed the log recently because I must have waited until you were up. But no, because you said I have an idea. I really hope you like it, and I wonder if you can guess where it's from. And then you said Ma Carrick, and I was like, oh, Carrick McCross. And then I was like, that's so brilliant because not only is it like, Carrick McCross referencing that, and it's M and A for Marie and Alyc, but MA is a cross for Carrick, and
Carrick
kind of
Ma Cross.
and yeah. So I was like, there were layers.
Yeah, so I wake up to this from Alyc and I'm like, it's even better than I thought. Yay, and Alyc likes it. We lost Juliet.
She'll be back.
Okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
It's like my phone starts ringing and it's 15 feet away from me, and now I have to turn it off so that we can continue to talk. Sorry about that.
Remind me I should mute my phone here, which I forgot to do. Gonna do that now. Okay.
Excellent plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pick something else to talk about. Why don't you tell me about Numenatria?
That one's Alyc's.
So yes, because Marie had done a lot of work on the pattern duck, even during the game, like there was a lot of work that she had done, and then when we started developing the novel, she kind of that blossomed. We knew that we were going to have this other magic system, and so I was like, well, I'll take point on that because I like kind of ritual magic and the kind of more structured magical systems. And so she loaned me this book that she had, which I usually have it on my desk and I can't grab it right now because I just changed.
I'm never
desk.
getting that book back, am I?
I actually think that I'm going to buy my own copy so that eventually you will get it back. But oh, it's over here. Here it is. So it's a beginner's guide to constructing the universe, the mathematical archetypes of nature, art, and science, a voyage from 1 to 10. It's a long title, by Michael Schneider. Going to be backwards.
That's fine.
But so she loaned me this book, and it's this really great book where it kind of goes through the numbers 1 through 10, and it talks about like Pythagorean ideas about the numbers and how to create create the geometric figures using basically just a compass, an edge, and a pencil, and the various places that you see it in nature and the various kind of meanings that it has, both like natural and esoteric, and in different cultures meanings. And by the end of the weekend, I had like a very long, like 5 or 6 page document just working out this entire system of.
I left Alyc unattended.
I was left unattended. And like I've kind of gotten a little. I was getting really into it. Like I got some golden mean calipers from this place in Australia that makes these just beautiful like brushed steel golden mean calipers. So I went a little whole hog on it. Because I wanted to know, like, okay, well, how would this work in practice? And so I was like drawing all these figures and kind of planning them out. So, yeah, that's where Numenatria came from and how it developed. And I'm hoping, I really need to get up some visuals about it so that people.
I was just thinking we've got a piece on our website that explains Numenatria, but we haven't uploaded any of the pictures of the various Numenata that you've drawn.
I found it earlier today.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, that's cool. Well, I'm gonna have that up as a resource because, of course, I was like, Alyc is going to want to talk about Numenatria. I should figure out what this is. So, but I mean, I think it's really interesting because numerology has been a very important cultural sort of thread in our history, as in the history of our world. So, incorporating that into your world makes it much more. I don't know. It gives it more verisimilitude, more depth, more interest. I don't know.
Well, it's like. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I kind of like also because like Numenatria is a very Leganti magic system. Like it's structured, and Leganti culture as a whole is a very structured culture. Like relationships are defined through contracts. Um, the entire idea of the lumen and the relationship of people to the kind of the divine is a very kind of structured, organized, logical, Greco-Roman-y, intellectualized
Yeah.
relationship with the divine. Whereas with the Rosenian, you have this more intuitive system of this divination system, these cards that can be read in multiple different ways with lots of language slippage going on, so that you can kind of take great meaning out of and do a lot of pattern recognition and false pattern recognition out of these things. And so I really like that even the magic systems are an expression of the cultures that they come from.
Now, if I may ask, does this world include a concept of magic as a resource that the two groups are accessing in different ways, or is it more like the magic grows out of the cultural phenomena?
So some of the answer I might make to that would be a spoiler, and so I can't quite say it.
Okay, well, no spoilers.
I mean,
That's cool.
it's definitely in terms of it being a resource. The idea behind Numenatria is that we spent some time at the beginning figuring out we've actually got 3 magic systems, and we wanted to be clear on what each of them sort of was at its core. So Numenatria is fundamentally about channeling energy. That is what it does. And it's channeling energy from the lumen, which is basically the like abstract godhead. So you can use it for things like, heat and cold, sound, force, life energy in a slightly more kind of abstracted sense. We made sure to work out how we can have magic birth control, for example.
Important.
Yes, this matters. And then pattern is actually... it's basically more about the connections between things and being able to interpret the meaning of those connections. And so it's doing a different kind of thing. And it's not thinking in the terms of there is a source of energy that I am channeling through to do stuff. That's how Numenatria works. And then our third one, imbuing, it's kind of the unloved stepchild of the 3 because it doesn't get respect. It's just the magic of crafting something to do whatever it does better. So like an imbued knife is sharper and it's less likely to chip or rust or something like that. Imbued boots are going to help you run more silently and maybe keep water out better when it's raining, and you can jump off a high building and you'll land with more cushioning. Not that the rook needs them for that or anything. But it's one where like it doesn't even really have sort of this like ideology and system about it. The way that you do imbuing is anybody, and like writers can feel this when they're writing, when you really get into the flow of what you're doing and
the
you're
words
like,
just work.
Yeah, like that's imbuing. So we're very clear on kind of what each of the 3 of them does. And there are some things where you can say, okay, you can accomplish this with multiple different systems, but they're going to do it in different ways.
Yeah. And in some cases, the systems clash. One of the things that we have that is a big limitation of Numenatria is that because it's such a logical, intellectual system, there's a big danger of imbuing, which is a kind of meditative crafting, imbuing a numinat, because what you basically do is instead of connecting to the godhead, the lumen, and channeling energy from there, you channel your life energy and you basically die to make this thing. And so you have to that is something that is inscriptors, which are the people who practice Numenatria, would say, don't ever try to imbue a numinat. That's not the way Numenatria is supposed to work. You're supposed to be careful and methodical and considered, not
you
just
can do
give yourself
great
over.
things. You can do great things if you imbue a numinat, but it will be the last thing you do.
Yeah. Well, there always has to be some kind of hazard with a powerful practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Numenatria, when they rely on precision to work well, and their imprecisions will eventually kind of make them break down. If it's really badly done, it can literally blow up on you. You got to be careful.
Well, that's fun. That's the case with many, many things.
Yep.
You do chemistry without precision, it can blow up on you.
Yep.
Yeah.
we
Numinatria
actually,
in very many ways is the science of circuitry, without, with a magic power source instead of like
Oh, that's
electricity or
cool.
something. Yeah, there's a kind of an electronics feel to it.
a different interview that we did one of those, like, these three characters, which one of them do you want for each of these three things? I don't know to what extent we're allowed to be swearing on this. I can't recall if that's
Oh, you
permissible
you
or not.
can
All of
swear. It's
it.
cool.
Okay, so we did both the fuck, marry, shag, I think, not kill. It
Yeah,
was kill. It was fuck, marry, kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, shag, fuck, whatever. And then the other one was something of like stuck in an elevator for 12 hours. They're training you at McDonald's or your lab part science class. And we agreed that anybody who does Numinatria, like, they would make a very good lab partner. They might blow up the lab, but
They do it deliberately.
Yes.
But like only if you two had agreed to it.
Exactly. It's like, ooh, you want to see what this could do?
Sure. So you've told us a little bit about Ren. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other major characters?
Those are more Alyssa's people in general, though those lines have gotten blurred over time.
They really have been blurred. Yeah, Ren is kind of our main core person that you travel with for about half of the book, I think, is her perspective, but then we switch back and forth. A couple of the other ones, Vargo is one of the other main ones, Derasi Vargo, who is a crime lord who is kind of working his way out of the illegitimate business and into legitimate business, and he's got plans, and he is exceedingly competent. He is the Numinatrian expert. He's the inscriptor, although that is a secret for the people reading the book know this.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say it's not a secret from the reader, but he doesn't advertise.
But in the rest of the world he doesn't advertise it because it is the kind of thing that's considered to be a high class skill, and his low origins, people would not assume that he knows it. So he's kind of defying expectations and breaking stereotypes all over the place. And he's a lot of fun because he's very competent. He's pretty ruthless. He's got some good intentions, but not always going about them the best way.
I'm just going to withhold comment on all of this here.
I was going to say I don't know what else to say. He is a lot of fun to write. He's also he's bisexual and aromantic, so he's a lot of fun to write in flirty situations as well, because he'll just flirt with anybody, and they will respond because he's awesome. I love Fargo so much.
Alyssa likes the morally questionable ones.
I like the morally questionable ones. Yeah. And then, but I also, so Grace Serrato is one of the other main POV characters, and he is an honest cop. He's a bit of a stick in the mud.
Honest cop in a corrupt city.
He's an honest cop in a corrupt city. He's kind of one of the bigger threats that Ren has to deal with, because he gets asked early on to look into her background, and unfortunately he's competent. So his looking into her background is a constant threat that she's kind of navigating with him. And he's also our main Versenian character. So we kind of get through him, we get the lens, because he is a Versenian cop in a Leganti system, and he's kind of the guy who's worked higher than anybody else in term, like he's made it to captain, and he's had some support, but he's also had a lot of pushback, and he encounters a lot of racism, both with the people he works at, but then also for his own Versenian people, he's kind of viewed as a traitor to their ethnicity. He's called a slipknot, is the kind of mean slang term for somebody who's betraying their people. And so he's kind of got that conflict that he's navigating.
It makes for
sort of negotiating his cultural alignment.
Yeah.
And it makes for interesting tensions with Ren, because she's half Versenian, but she's masquerading as this Sateran noblewoman. And so there's kind of there's a connection there, but it's not a connection that she can acknowledge. And like Alyssa said, he's a threat to her situation. So
Interesting.
And from her perspective, she is doing what she is doing to basically get one over on the legs, whereas he has sold out and is just trying to be one of them. Yeah.
Mhm.
Trying to pwn the ligs with a G.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Well, so it sounds like there are three major cultures here.
Really just the two. Like Soteris really only shows up with Renata, and she does that for a couple of reasons, like why that's the best choice for her con. But one of them is that it's easier to pass herself off as something that isn't the home culture of the elite of the city, but rather a thing they admire but don't personally know.
Yeah, right.
I
Because
would say
nobody's going to be fine tooth combing your
Exactly.
Yeah.
delivery of their lines or your enactment of their behaviors. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that Nadezhran culture is kind of its own thing because the Vrsenians, so Nadezhra was their holy city, and it got basically their continent got taken over about 200 years before the start of the book. And then the people of Vrasan basically pushed back and took back most of their land and everything, but not their holy city. And so it's an unusual situation from what you usually see with colonizers and colonized, because most of Vrasan is owned by Vrsenians, and they thrive, and there's no Leganti really influence there. It's just this one kind of bastion that they haven't taken back, but it's because it's their holy city. There's still a lot of Vrsenians living there and trading through there. And so you've got the Vrsenian culture, which is very kind of strong because it's still got this, land base that it's based in. And then you've got the kind of the descendants of the Leganti, and there's still back and forth travel and communication between them, but they've kind of become their own little backwater. But the Nadezhra is kind of its own culture because you've got all of these influence, and you've got, the people who are descendants of kind of, mixed Vrsenian and Leganti, who have kind of don't really have any cultural ties to either of them. And so in that way, it's very, very much got an American kind of melting pot feel to it, where it's become its own kind of individual culture.
Own, like Creole-ish type.
Yeah. There's a lot of hybridization that goes on.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've described the city kind of like Venice. Is it geographically cut off from both of the regions that have the parent cultures in them?
It's across a sea from Seste Levante, so there's no direct land connection there. There's a fair bit of sea trade. With Vrasan, I mentioned that there's this long river, the Dejera, that flows from south to north, and it's a big, wide river valley area. And they've got, connections by land to neighboring countries and so forth. But since Nadezhra sits at the head of the delta, the river trade, when it wants to get to the sea, kind of has to go through Nadezhra. And so that's where you get a lot of the political tension, which especially starts to come up in the second, and particularly it will be in the third book that you see a lot of what goes on with that. But there's a scene in the first book where the leaders of the Vrsenian clans have to basically come every year and perform a ceremony with the leaders of Nadezhra to sort of reaffirm the treaty that they have signed, which is not a very favorable treaty to Vrasan, because Nadezhra controls the mouth of the river and has enough money to hire mercenaries enough to keep themselves from being overrun.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Cool. I keep going, okay, where can I poke them next to get more cool things to come out?
So let us tell you about the folklore of the River Dejera.
Oh my God. I need to post another folklore thread to Twitter. I haven't done one in a little bit. Yeah, because we're both folklorists, we've got all of this knowledge about the kinds of stories they tell and such. We've got references to this sort of trickster heroine, Clever Natalia, and we've got some stories about Clever Natalia. So I've been posting on Twitter about that.
And then the kind of Vrsenian mother goddess, who is the mother of all the clans. There's a lot of tie-ins with her and the River Dejera. Her name is Azurais, so Azurais, Dejera, Nadezhra. There's some
we've got linguistic games we're playing there.
Going on there.
Linguistics games are best games.
I thought you might like those.
Indeed, I do.
Yeah, so we've been posting some of that from the Ma Carrick account on Twitter, just because, if we have this stuff and it's mostly never going to show up in the novel because it doesn't actually matter to the plot, then why not?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of cool to see the underlayers and and get a little alternate thing. So are there any plans in the works to create to like compile a set of these folklore kind of stories?
We might have been talking about that the other day. Our thought basically, yeah, like, because the thing is, I mean, I have written a short story for the setting that just came out in Beneath Ceaseless Skies on January 1st, As Tight as Any Knot. But a lot of the folklore stuff, it's not short fiction in the usual sense. Like it is not following the conventions of modern stories. And so rather than trying to like find ways to craft that into something that we could, you know, sell to a normal fiction magazine, we're sort of talking about maybe we should just kind of like let the folklorist flag fly unfettered, write up a bunch of the folktales and myths and so forth, and then we could put them out as like one or more little kind of like ebooks, basically. Like, get all of the fables of the Versenian clan animals. Here you go.
Yeah, because
Sure.
each of the clans has like associated animals and kind of identities that aren't necessarily true, but they're definitely stereotypes of them. And so just this whole kind of like category of folk tales that are about the clan animals pulling one over on each other and causing problems, and each of them they're 3 sets of paired twins and then a loner, a singleton. And so kind of telling the stories about those relationships.
I noticed when I was looking at the Numenatria stuff that there were animals associated with those as well.
Yes.
The
And
thing that
that's
Alyc,
where, I was gonna say, and that's where the title, the names for the months come from, and a couple other things.
So like Felun is the month of the cat, Pavnaloon is the month of the peacock,
Apaloon is the month of the bee, which is 6 because
hexagons are the bestigons, if anybody
Of
has watched that
course.
video.
Of course it is.
When Alyc like wandered, I gave Alyc this book on the 1 to 10 thing, saying I had last read it back in high school. It's like, I remember it being really interesting, so I loan it to Alyc. They go away and I'm like, God, I hope that book isn't just really embarrassing now. I haven't looked at it in years. And then like 3 days later, Alyc comes back with this 5-page document that's like, okay, here is each of the noumena. Here's the number, the shapes associated with it. It has a color, a metal, a gem, an animal, a part of the body. So there's all kinds of symbolism packed into each one of the noumena, which it's a fun thing to be able to work that into the background of like how the characters dress, or the names of the months, or there's a whole astrological system Alyc cooked up as well.
Yeah. Well, because we realized that astrology was also going to be important, and we were hand waving it for a while, but then it became plot important, and then we were like, okay, well, we need to work this out and also know everybody's birthday in astrological charts. And so
some of our characters, because of the type of story this is, we need to know their actual birthday and then also the birthday they tell people they have because they're lying about it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So what kinds of tools are you using to compile and organize all of these reams and reams of information?
We tried a couple of different things, actually, and what we ended up settling on is my husband, bless him for doing this, set up a private wiki for us. So we've actually got a privately hosted wiki that we can both access, where we've got things noted down. Actually, on my to-do list is to put in all the stuff that we then developed for book 2. And we tried a couple of others, like sort of wiki type things. We just decided that that setup was kind of the most functional for it. And then we also have various documents that we wrote up early on. Like there is a Numenatria for Newbies file that I think that's the thing that Alyc sent me.
It's a Numenatria for Newbies, I think was the first one. And then you decided to title
Pattern for Professionals.
Pattern Professionals. And then it was Astrology for Amateurs. And I can't remember.
Imbuing for initiates.
Initiates. So there's like a bunch of these at this point.
And there's an incomplete one which we need to finish. Versenians also do knotwork, kind of like you see with Chinese knotwork. And so there is a knotwork for novices file. We're nerds, whatever.
Definitely. I think that is required.
And those might also be things that we could potentially clean up and publish little. Like,
some of them are actually up on the website now, like Pattern for Professionals, Numenatria for Newbies. They're slightly simplified. So
I was gonna say, they're a little simplified. But and then for the calendar thing, I need to like promote this because it's such a useful thing. It's fantasy untitled-calendar.com is this like online web app that basically lets you create fantasy calendars, and you can create multiple moons and different months, and you can figure out the moon's rotation and
like it'll tell you what phase the multiple, because we have 2 moons in this setting. And every time we reference like whether they're full or half or whatever, it's because of this site. We can just go look and go, okay, that's what phase they're in on that day. Good.
Oh, nice.
And you can set it up like the Saturn calendar is a calendar of 10 months of 36 days each, and then 5 intercalary days that are basically the new year for them. And so you can program all of that in there and say, here's how long my year is, here's how long the months are, and it'll just run that whole thing for you, which is incredibly helpful.
You can define how long the weeks are, how many days are, like what are the names of the days of the week. Like it's very versatile.
We've got some folklore about like, what is for Versenians, what day of the week you were born on, a little bit like the Monday's child thing. It's like, expect of your personality. And so because we have this, we can do things like say, okay, if this is when Ren's birthday is and she's this old, then in that year, what day of the week was that? And it'll just tell us.
Excellent. That's a very helpful tool.
Yes. fantasy-calendar.com. We recommend it highly. I believe it's Patreon supported, so go give them some money too.
It's got some kind of little Patreon support, or it's got some kind of support. I know I gave them money. So you should.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, look at that. It's 6:00. I'm sure that we could just go on and on because this is super fun. But I want to thank both of you for coming on the show. This is just super fun. Everybody go out, buy the Mask of Mirrors, enjoy it, have fun, geek out, get into the linguistics, the folklore, the everything. It's going to be really, really great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just such a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's fun to be back here.
Yeah. All right. So we'll do this again sometime.
We absolutely will, because there are more things to be nerds about.
Oh, yeah.